Ever since I started posting tag slabs in my personal IG account and making videos about tag and YouTube, a lot more people have been reaching out to me and asking me, hey, what card should I be grading? It's no longer if I should be grading with tag, but what card should I be grading? It's even rekindled some of my old friendships, including a friendship with one of my friends named Oscar. He's a guy that I served in the military together. We went to boot camp together. We went our separate ways. We got stationed in the same station a couple years later. And then he was never from El Paso, but now that he's out, he's actually living in El Paso. He reached out to me. He's like, hey, I know you're from El Paso from our conversations back in boot camp. He's like, how you doing? We talked, and I told him, it's like, hey, you got nothing going on this weekend. Come over to my son's birthday party, right? I threw a birthday party for my son. He came over, and he like, I got something for your son, a gift, which I appreciate, right? As a parent, like you love stuff like that. But then he brought me something else for myself. He brought me a Dark Blastoise first edition from Rocket. This is insane. Like, this is insane. And we were talking about how he's also kind of master setting Japanese 151, and the only card that he was missing was a Blastoise. So I'm like, cool, I gotcha. I went up to my room, to my little man cave, my neon man cave, and I got my one and only Japanese 151 booster box. I got it, and I went up to him, and I'm like, here you go, man. I know the Blastoise is in there. I don't know how, but I just know it. I just know it. And he's like, he was like, no, I can't take it. I can't take it. You know how much money that's worth? I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's not about the money. And sometimes relationships are more important than money, right? Especially friendships, right? Plus, you do a good deed here, it'll eventually come back. So I gave it to him. He went home, and he's like, I'm probably going to open this with my son, right? 15 minutes later, whenever he got home, I'm getting FaceTimed. I'm like, first of all, that shit's gay. What guy FaceTimes another guy? That shit is gay, right? You could have just sent me a photo. I would have been okay with that. But as soon as he started calling me, and then I already knew he got the Blastoise. I'm like, good. I hope he got the Blastoise, but I'm going to be pissed if he got a God Pack. He shows me everything. He shows me, look at the first card that I got. He got a Bulbasaur, nothing crazy. And then look at the second card that I got. He got a Snorlax. And I'm like, okay, these are pretty fire. That booster box was pretty legit. He then showed me, oh, this is my Master Ball. He showed me he got a Master Ball Taurus. And here, I'll tell you something that I'm going to collect. One of the things I'm going to collect now is I'm going to go ahead and collect 30 different Tauruses. Or I'm going to collect 30 Tauruses. You might be asking yourself, why? Why are you going to do that? Taurus is not that much of a great Pokemon. You're right, but Ash Ketchum caught 30 Tauruses in the anime, and he ended up being the champion, a couple years down the road. So, I'm going to try that strategy. I'm going to collect some Tauruses. I'm going to collect 30 Tauruses just to be just like Ash Ketchum in the anime. But besides the point, he's showing me all the cards that he pulled, and then finally he showed me the Squirtle, the War Turtle, the Blastoise, Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. This mofo had a God Pack. I gave him a God Pack. I'm so happy for him. Ecstatic. But nonetheless, he also brought me his binder of cards that he has from his PC that he wants to go ahead and get graded with tag. And this is what relationships get you in the hobby. People, you can build some solid relationships with friends, and I'm not gonna fuck with them. I'm not gonna mess with them. He's a Marine too, right? So if he starts to mess with my life, I'm a Marine too. Things are gonna get messy. Things are gonna get murky, right? But he brought me his binders. And then I was looking at it, and he has some pretty sweet cards, right? I mean, the Mega Evolution Bulbasaur, low gem rate, high reward. We're talking about, he has another Dark Blastoise, Chinese Sylveon, Umbreon for some people. His collection is pretty freaking sweet. And I'm going to be looking at them and telling them, wait, these ones are going to be the best cards that you have to possibly get a 10. Look, the main point of this video is that you guys should really be considering to grade with tag, right? Especially if you want to increase the value of your collection, whether if you want to increase your collection, whether if you're going to resell, if you're looking to use as leverage, go ahead and grade with tag. Even if you don't believe that tag is going to do great, it is a fantastic learning tool if you want to really get into grading and then wait in line with PSA for the next 5 to 6 months to get your shit back. Do what you want, right? But don't diss tag, especially as tag has gained more popularity. I reached out to one of our fellow subscribers who does big advocate of tag, and you guys already know him. It's going to be Tag Show. And I asked him a couple questions. And he finally got back to me in a video form. So it's like we're almost like I'm doing an interview and asking, like, I'm not trying to sell you this product. Tag Show is also trying to like not sell you the product, but he's trying to be as transparent as people in the hobby should be. We're not in it for the monetary value, even though there is monetary value. We'll go ahead and admit that. But we're collectors first. We're enthusiasts, right? We're hobbyists. And so I asked him a couple questions and he got back to me. So now we're going to be listening to his response, and that'll be like whether we can agree and disagree with his response, right? Because this is not necessarily like, this is like an interview, and this is a YouTube interview. But we're not doing it live. We're not doing it together at the same time. I'm sending him some questions. He's giving me his answers back in video form, and now we're gonna see it together and we'll talk about it. So hopefully you guys enjoy. It's gonna be a long one. Make sure you guys have your water. Make sure if you guys are listening to this as you guys are taking a shower, hell yeah, you're gonna be in there for a while. You're gonna get all pruny and shit. So here we go. This is the beginning of my so-and-so interview with Tag Show.
Everyone, Tag Shill back, cameo on another one of Dan's videos. He asked me to answer a couple of questions, give my opinion on a couple of questions, so we're here to do that. The first being, do I think tag grading is here to stay? The answer is probably obvious, but the answer is yes, I do. Absolutely. Nobody else in the hobby offers what Tag brings to the table. They're not just another grading company like you see pop up here and there, or like the crazy amount of alphabet companies that jumped up during the pandemic. They bring dig reports. They've got the 1,000-point scale. And as Dan loves to say, they bring objective grading, not subjective grading to the hobby, which is really good. There's a couple of other companies that do the objective grading. They do like the computer stuff, the AI stuff, but that's not all they bring. That's just one thing that they bring. The 1,000-point scale, super duper cool. I think that's a game changer in itself, even though I haven't personally graded too many like that, because I like to grade a lot of cards, and you know, it can add up a bit. But if I'm sending something in there that I know is very, very pristine, that might have a chance at an actual pristine 10, then yeah, I'm gonna get that 1,000-point scaling, because I'll believe that one of mine can be one of the best in there. Now, if I'm sending in, like I like to do personally, I like to send in like 30, 40, 50 cards at a time. I'm not going to do the 1,000-point scaling on all of them, but it does have its place, and I think it's really, really cool. The other thing is the dig reports. The dig reports are crazy, am I right? This is what we've all been asking for this entire time. Nobody wants to give it to you. It takes too much time. Somehow, you have to pay for subgrades as if that's not part of the process of grading a card. You know, I remember, who was it, CGC or Beckett said it took longer to do subgrades. It's like, what do you mean it takes longer? That's just grading the card and telling me what you're grading it as. Anyways, they're giving you all of that, and at a reasonable price. Less than PSA. Even with their price hike, they're still staying below PSA. Now, you combine all of that together, and then you got the best looking slab in the game. Even people who don't grade with tag will tell you that they have the best looking slab in the game. So you combine all of that together, you got the best looking slab in the game. It's just chef's kiss. Let's go.
All right, so let's go ahead and go back to some of the things that he did say, that Tag Show did say. First of all, we're going to go ahead and start by saying that Tag does have the best slabs in the game. Like, I understand that some people don't like the whole entire see-through thing, but whenever we're looking at the slabs and you get to see the cards as clear as possible, there's nothing that gets nearly or like competes to that. The slabs look amazing. They feel like sturdy. They feel light. They just look amazing. And personally, I always love the way like the hollow really pops out, especially on the cards that I like to collect. If we're talking about half art hollows, Cosmos Swirl hollows, I love that shit. It looks so good. But even then, one of the biggest controversies that we talked about was the fact that Tag did increase their prices, right? They're trying to stay as close as possible to their turnaround time, but they went ahead and increased their prices. They went ahead and removed their whole entire bulk grade. But even after doing that, their prices are still cheaper than PSA's prices at the moment. Currently, at the moment, Tag is still cheaper than PSA. We don't know if that's going to change. We don't know if PSA is eventually going to try to do like a sale, because there's a couple people that are trying to do a boycott about it. And like, even if you do a boycott on PSA for the month of May, you're not going to see the true accurate numbers of grading. I'm sorry. PSA is currently and still working out their backlog, so we wouldn't see the boycott take effect until later in the summer. And by that time, I'm sorry, but during the middle of the summer, early, like by the time that we start getting closer to the 30th anniversary, grading is going to pick up for PSA. Something has to happen where people will lose a lot of trust, but still, the backlog that they have is now going to give us accurate information of any boycotting effort. But prices are cheaper. We still get the dig report, which is transparency. Whenever you're getting to grading, whenever we get into grading and you get your cards back, we want to know why our cards got that grade. You do. If you feel like you had a solid 10 and it came back as a 9 through PSA, you think you've been cheated, right? And then again, people usually think that they're never wrong and their cards are the exceptions, right? But sometimes PSA will do some things. Not too long ago, in one of the interviews that they did with an ex-PSA employee, do this, because you got to be skeptical, right? If they're unsure about something, they rather slap a 9 than do a 10. They rather slap a 9, and they'll be fine. And if it gets regraded again, well, yeah, they're going to make some money more, but maybe they'll go through like the hands of a more experienced grader, and it'll get the accurate grade that it needs, right? So some of these 9s are 10s. But maybe just some untrained eye or just a rookie grader got to actually see the slabs prior. But, we get transparency with Tag, and that goes a long way. Like, as you get older, you will appreciate transparency. Sometimes you just don't want to get shitted on. You don't want to get bullshitted. You just want to know what you're getting back, right? So, like Tag Chill said, best slabs in the game. We're talking about cheaper prices than PSA, and most importantly, the dig report. The dig report is clutch. It's one of the best things that Tag offers that no one else is offering to the same extent that Tag is. Now, let's go into the second question that I asked them. I did ask them, hey, what is something positive that you've felt or you've seen while you've been grading with Tag? And this is what he replied.
Right, what was a negative lesson that I've learned while grading, selling, or collecting Tag slabs? And honestly, I don't have a negative lesson. I've had a really good time, and that's why I'm so promotional for Tag. The joke is Tag shill. Obviously, I'm not getting paid by anybody, but people like to push back on Tag, call us Tag bots, Tag shills, call us all these things, but in reality, it's just a great product, and I've had no issues with it. So I'm out here spreading the love. I'm pretty 50-50 with what I grade when it comes to keeping it for my personal collection or selling it on eBay. And I do sell on eBay. I'm not a vendor. I don't go to shows a whole lot or anything like that. So I have heard that in shows that it's harder to sell. So I can't really speak on that. I believe it, though. I've seen video footage. I know Dan has been to shows recently, so I know it's a real thing. But I'm an eBay guy. Always have been, always will be. Like, I sell on eBay. I've had no issues on eBay. So if you're an eBay person, depending on where you live, maybe you don't live by somewhere, they only have one show a year or whatever. But I will tell you this, things are changing. I believe every year, every show you go to, you're going to see more Tag slabs coming out. But with that being said, mostly I sell some of the slabs because I'm trying to cover grading fees and other stuff like that. Help pay for the degeneracy of the hobby that I have. So Something I will say though is selling them on eBay, you will get the people who try to take advantage of you. They'll send you DMs on eBay and they'll be like, hey man, this is a tag and there's a PSA for the same price. And you just have to, don't get bullied. You just have to tell them like, then you're not my target audience, bro. Like if you don't want to pay for it, then don't pay for it. But now with that being said, you can always work with people. I'm not telling you not to work with people. If you want to let it go, then let it go. But at the end of the day, don't let somebody tell you tag sucks or that tag's worth less than PSA and just eat it up. If you don't want to let it go for that, don't let it go for that. I'm not here to tell you either that tag is more liquid than PSA or something like that. No, PSA is king of liquidity. It is what it is, and it's going to be that way for a while. Even if the tides are changing, it's going to be that way for a while. So it's just something that we have to deal with now. With that being said, I'm not one to be typically in a hurry to sell my slabs. I'm not like hurting for money. If you're into collecting, you shouldn't be hurting for money either. Those two things don't mesh very well, but you do you. So I list my things, and I list several of my slabs for more than PSA prices. If it's something that I'm okay with getting rid of, and it's something that I want to get rid of quickly, I will just undercut, like anybody normally does. I will just undercut the next guy, whether it's PSA or not, PSA or tag or not. I'm just going to look at what is the PSA or tag 10, and then I'm going to slightly undercut that guy, and then you're going to sell. A lot of my slabs, though, I put them above PSA. If I'm the only guy with a tag 10 on eBay, you're damn right. If a PSA 10 is going for 100, I might put mine for 125. If it's a tag 10, I'm the only one, or if there's another tag 10 up there, but it's even higher. You know what I mean? Is it going to sell right away? Not always, no. But it will sell. It'll eventually sell. You're just looking for that collector. Now, this is where we say the liquidity is not fully there. It is what it is. But tides are changing. Tag is coming up. You see it in the monthly reports. You see all this stuff. I'm blabbing now. I wasn't asked to talk this much, so let's keep it going here. I can be a talker for sure.
So let's go back to a couple of things that he did say. And I also grade and sell my tag slabs on eBay. And I've done it a couple of times in person, right? But mostly on eBay. And he has a solid point about a couple of things. Is they're not as liquid, meaning they won't sell nearly as fast, but people will pay those prices and you will sell the cards eventually. There's been some cards that I've had there on eBay for a while. Some of them go up away in a week, right? Some of them have done it like in 3 days. After I posted it, it sold 3 days. There's a couple cards that have been there for like 6 months. But you gotta understand, I like ripping and grading bad sets. I love the underdog sets. I really do. You guys already know this because I'm a big fan of Perfect Order. And the Scarlet and Violet era, when I really started getting my hands into more collections, right? Because I finally had the adult money to actually buy, but I wasn't going to be dumb and buy English. I would just be ripping Japanese. Shrouded Fable, Stellar Crown, Stellar Crown, the Japanese one. And they sold, like the reboot is a fantastic card. The Knockdown, fantastic card. Those cards are fast, they're liquid, but you get what I'm saying? Like they move. Now, when people, and it does happen. Another thing that he says that he'll get messages from other people. Hey, it's not worth that much. It's a tag 10. Right? Here's the thing. He knows who he's selling to, and so do I. We are not selling to resellers. We're not selling to investors. We're selling to other collectors, and we're going to be selling cards for them. If they want a master set, if they're looking for certain Pokemon, we're selling to them. So collectors who are looking for that Pokemon or that card, for whatever reasons they have, they will pay those prices, and they will. Look, one of the craziest sales for some people, but if you've been into grading, you know that this is one of your best sales. So this is one of your best grading plays because your margins are significantly high. But like I said before, you grade and you resell Cosmo Hollow Swallow card, blister promo cards, but they have the Cosmo Hollow Swirl. The 810 prismatic pack that we got. not like earlier in 2025. It had 8 different tins with 8 different evolutions. They were all reprinted evolution cards, but there were Cosmo Hollow Swirls and there were promo cards for that. I went ahead and got that. I went ahead and graded them. Some of them came back as a 9. Most of them came back as a 9. Some of them came back as a 10. But here, the Flareon had a swirl. The raw card is like a 90-cent card. But after grading fees, like after grading it and then the seller fees, I still sold that card for $150. From $90 to $150 to you. That's insane. But to some people, they're either a Flareon collector, they're trying to get a tag 10 of the Prismatic 8 promo cards, or whatever they want, or EV collector. But it's sold, right? Cosmo Hollow cards sell. So just know that whenever you're selling tag slabs, you are selling to other tag collectors, right? Doesn't mean it's going to be going nearly as fast, but whenever you're selling to another tag collector, then you understand that they're probably going to be looking at the dig report and seeing if they see something and maybe tag didn't, or what good is the centering. Is this something they could possibly do in the future to go ahead and try to go for a black label, right? Even though it's not a pristine 10. Right now, I'm convinced that pristine tag 10s are black label 10s. I'm convinced. I haven't had any opportunities to really try that out, but I'm convinced that's the situation that we're at, right? But just know who your audience is. And yes, going back to one of the first things that he did hit, whenever he understands, Tag Chill understands that these slabs, as at the moment, are not as liquid or marketable in conventions. However, I have noticed that every single card shop here in El Paso, whenever there's a tag slab there one day and the next couple days, give it 2 days, it's gone. I never seen a tag slab stay in the shop for more than a week. So there are people around your town that are probably collecting it. So it might not be a bad idea for you to go ahead and grade some slabs, get them, and if you get a good amount of 10s, go to your local card shop and sell them there. We're only going to make this hobby bigger and get tags popularity up as more people are accustomed to seeing tag slabs out in the market, out there. Not only conventions, but local card shops that don't require the big money to assemble this group of masses, right? So really do consider that. But let's continue with the interview. So I asked him, what's something negative that he experienced, but what's something positive? I think finally it really is a positive questions, and let's see what he has to say.
So that's it, right? Of course, PSA has the liquidity, but Tag does sell at PSA prices or even above if you just give it a little time. But I mean, we're not all vendors here, right? I mean, are you a vendor? Am I a vendor? Are you a company? Do you have a business license? Like, we're not trying to sell hundreds of slabs, We each probably have a handful of slabs at any given time that we're trying to sell. So you're not trying to like churn and burn, you know what I mean? You toss a couple up there, let them ride. What was a positive lesson that I've learned while grading, selling, and collecting tag slabs? So leading into that, or using my previous comments on the negatives that I didn't really have, but leading into the positives, a positive experience I have had is people will pay for as much or more than PSA slabs. It's just the truth. They will. Again, don't let people bully you. Put your price point. It will sell eventually. If you're in a hurry to sell it, just undercut the PSA 10 or whatever grade it is. We'll just talk in tens. Undercut the PSA 10 by $1 or whatever, and yours will sell. Trust me. There is evidence, and we will show you some as well. Like I said, I like to do like 30, 40, 50 card subs. And so when those come back, usually the day that they come back, I will list a handful. Maybe I'll list like 15, 20 slabs, depending on the size of the sub. I'll list that on eBay. And within that same very day, I usually, the real hot ones, the real favorites, you know what I mean? Those will sell the same day if I price them to sell, meaning I undercut the next guy. If I'm okay with what the going rate is for it and I just undercut them by $1, 50 cents, whatever, it sells that same day. If I'm trying to get the premium, I want to, an extra 20, 40, 50 bucks, depending on the price of the 10, then yeah, it might take a couple days to a couple of weeks, but that's something that I'm okay with. Here, I'll take a moment if Dan wants to allow me to, and I'll show you some evidence of PSF from today, the day of this recording, of TAG selling, outperforming PSA. Just a couple real quick from today. All right, so just real quick, here on the top, you will see a 2003 Pokemon Skyridge H11 Houndoom Hollow PSA 9 with a swirl for $1,500. Of course, I did my due diligence. I went to 130point.com to see if a best offer was accepted. You can see on the right in the black there, you can see that no, not a best offer was accepted. It sold for $1,500. Now, draw your attention down to the bottom where the tag 9 is. You will see that there is a tag 9 that sold of the exact same card, the Skyridge Houndoom H11 tag 9. It sold hollow. It sold for $2,350 and was a best offer accepted. Draw your attention to the right. You will see that yes, a best offer was accepted. It sold actually for $2,285, but that is a massive difference with the $1,500 on the above. Houndoom from PSA, just one example. A second example here, you will see the newer Mega Charizard X EX from the UPC. You will see that in the top left, there is a PSA 10 that sold for $2,676 on bid. You'll see below that, $2,750 on bid. And then below that, you will see $2,850 or best offer. We did 130 point. That one on the top right, you'll see that the offer was taken for $2,600 on that PSA 10. These were all on April 21st, which was yesterday. There was no record of any selling yet today as the time of this recording, but there was a tag 10 that sold today. If you look in the middle on the bottom there, the tag 10 sold for $2,700 as a best offer accepted. Now, these were within 1 day. All of these were within 1 day of each other. So 2 of the PSA 10s sold for less than the tag 10. And one of the PSA 10s sold for $50 more than the tag 10. The point is, tag will sell for as much as PSA and can even sell for more than PSA. One last example here is a post that I made 13 days ago where I said I said they could have purchased this ugly PSA 10 for $85 shipped, but they chose to buy my beautiful tag 10 for a premium $100 shipped. You could see it there. I sold my tag 10 Charizard V for $100 shipped, while there was a PSA 10 for $80 plus $5 shipping sitting there on eBay. They chose not to buy that one. That was still for sale, and they chose to buy mine. Just another example showing that that tag will sell for as much as PSA or maybe even more. And if Dan wants to show this real quick, he can. There's this guy, Boston Card Hunter on YouTube. I don't know the guy, but he's like a sports card guy. Anyways, he's putting out videos just the day of this recording, boycott PSA, the breaking point, why the hobby is turning on PSA. And then at the time of me editing this little clip, which is the following day, 8 hours ago, he posted this saying, boycott PSA in May, no more upcharges. He has a bunch of other posts on crazy stuff that goes on with PSA. So moving on. So directed at new tag collectors who are thinking about grading with tag, what suggestions can I give them, or what's some stuff that I have learned? People getting into the tag.
I think this is going into the last question that I asked them, right? But for negative experience, or like for the positive experiences, the cards are liquid. You can move them. If you undersell some of the PSA 10 prices, you can move your slabs, right? If you have a hot card, they will probably sell for more than the current PSA 10 price. And, and we've been seeing it. I've been talking about what we're seeing through the collector app whenever they're tracking some of these high auctions. And whenever they're posting now, It's gotten to the point where whenever the collector app is posting prices or slabs, they're using tag. They're using PSA versus tag, PSA versus tag, black label 10s versus pristine 10s. It's a one for one comparison. So even collector, the app, or those people who are definitely benefiting financially out of the hobby, they understand that tag has a place for them to stay here in the scene and the value that they bring into the hobby. So really, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, go with tag. I'm just saying, maybe. Okay, I'm not gonna sell that too hard. Maybe you should really strongly consider to possibly lean towards grading with tag. Yeah, that's a little bit more not so direct. All right, but the last thing that I asked them is like, hey, what are some of the recommendations that you have for someone who is going to get grade to tag, right? Because maybe you reached out to me and maybe I haven't replied to you. Maybe you reached out to other people and the same thing, right? But maybe this is coming from advice from someone who does grade with tag pretty, I'm not going to say excessively, but more than what I guess normie people entering the hobby would consider, right? 30 submissions. Those are pretty big submissions, and you need to have pretty deep pockets to do that. Regardless of the cards, the submission is going to get pretty pricey, especially if you're grading the score. But let's see what he has to say.
Tag space, that's great. You may have heard things like you should crack. There's this rhetoric going around like, hey, just crack your PSA 9s and send them in a tag and you'll get 10s. That was going around maybe a year ago or more. That's just not true. It's not how it works. Tag is actually pretty strict when it comes to that. I personally believe that PSA does some population control. So if you sent them a card, mostly, I would say like mostly vintage Pokemon or something like that, and they give you a 9 and you truly have done all your due diligence and you believe it's a 10, then yeah, crack that bitch and send that to tag. Because they aren't going to do any bias over at tag. They're going to give you the grade that it deserves based on the data that they are going to also present to you. No shenanigans. But just willy-nilly cracking a PSA 9 and sending it to tag, that's not a good idea. Except for when you want it to be in a beautiful slab and have the report on it. Of course, it's a great idea. That being said, tag is fairly strict. It's a fairly strict grading company. If you want easy 10s or something like that, then you go to CGC. But what comes along with that is that you suffer with people fire selling CGC slabs on eBay, and you're losing a ton of value. CGC 10s just don't, demand, and that's easily viewed on eBay. You just type it into eBay and take a look, and you'll just see that CGC 10s are just not. People just aren't selling them for as much, and people aren't buying them for as much. It is what it is, but you can get easy 10s. You really can. Being strict is a great thing, though. It's not like a bad thing, like, oh, they're too strict or this or that. They're not too strict. They're accurately strict, and you can gain a presence in the hobby for that. Just think of how Beckett was, where Beckett was known for being strict, and their higher grades demanded a premium. If you remember, or if you know this or not, Beckett 9.5s are worth a lot. Beckett 9.5s can sometimes fetch you as much or more than a PSA 10 because they're known to be, more strict. And then obviously there's the Beckett Black label, which is astronomical. Tag also has a pristine 10 above a basic 10, and it has to have a very high grade in order to get that. Or it has to, it's a very high grade to get that. So yeah, don't get me wrong. They're not too strict. They're strict enough to get an accurate grade, and people buying that card can know that the card that's inside that slab is actually what's the number on the slab. You can feel confident in that. But every major company goes by the same grading criteria, right? We got corners, edges, surface, and centering. And I will say this, that it may appear that tag is very strict on the centering, because if you define strict, right, they do have a strict cutoff on centering. It has to be 45-55 percentage wise on the borders for centering. So they are very strict about that. If you fall out of that, if you are, it's a very, there's no, well, it looks good. No, it has to be 45, 55 or better. If it falls down and it's like a 44, 56, and suddenly, even though you're just 1 point out, 1% out of that, it is strict, cutoff for that. So you're not going to get your 10. That's going to drop you straight down to a 9 or further based on other damage to the card. So in that sense, they could appear that they are very strict on centering. So one thing that I would tell new collectors is be sure about your centering of your cards that you're sending in. And with that being said, I do sometimes send some borderline cards. You can use your phone app, all these different things, the little measuring tool that you can buy on Amazon or eBay or whatever, and you can try to make sure that you're sending in cards that are within the 45 to 55. Now, sometimes I'll have a card that I think is right on there. I think, all right, this is like right on, it's a hair, it's right on there. I think this is like on the dot, 45, 55. And then it might come back 44, 56. So you have to be okay. If you're going to send those cards in, you have to be okay with them coming back at 9. And that's just not something to cry about. That's a gamble you have to be willing to take. And even with the phone apps and stuff, based on how you tilt your phone, if you tilt your phone one direction, just a couple degrees or whatever, it's going to throw off the whole thing. It has to be directly straight. It's not an easy thing to do. So it's hard, to accurately pre-grade that. I would say if you're sending in modern cards, don't play with the centering. Make sure that centering is Gucci. If you're sending in, vintage cards, likely if you get a 9 due to centering, the card is still going to go up in value significantly. So it's not as big of a deal. Now, as for cards that you send into tag, I've sent English vintage Pokemon. I've sent in Japanese vintage Pokemon. I've sent in English modern Pokemon, and they've done me good on all of those. I've sent in English One Piece and English Lorcana. Everything has come back great. I have not sent in modern Japanese Pokemon, but I know Dan can speak to that, so I'm sure he will and has. So other than that, that's what I've sent in to tag. Hopefully, I talked your ear off, I'm sure, but hopefully that this was helpful and it's going to answer some of your questions, or just get in there and grade with tag, you guys. You're going to love it. I just know it. Tag chill out.
Yeah. First of all, he does like to talk a lot, right? That's supposed to be my niche. That's what I'm supposed to be doing to y'all. I'm supposed to be talking your guys' ear off, and this guy's over here trying to copy me. Now, I'm just kidding. No, honestly, whenever you start talking about something that you're very passionate, you will have the tendency of rambling on because you just love that product so much. And I'm glad that he does, because that shows you that this is another person that understands what tag is and is very passionate about tag, just like I am when it comes to grading. So as you can see, look, if you're looking to grade with tag to make a profit, increase the value to resell, I think there's a fantastic position to do with English modern, top ones, and even some promotional cards. And we're talking about English vintage. Honestly, I think that's such an untapped market, and this might be the best time to be doing it, because it seems like vintage cards are really starting to get collected at a high premium, because people who are coming into this hobby with a lot of money want to go ahead and collect things that the common people don't have. And that's going to be like high grade vintage stuff. So if you have any of that, maybe you do, maybe you don't, really do consider going into that space and try to capitalize on an untapped market, right? Vintage Japanese, same thing. Some of the most expensive cards in the hobby are Japanese vintage cards, and some of the promotional cards that go for an extreme amount of money, they never translated to English, are Japanese vintage cards. So those are usually have great conditions too, so really do consider about getting some of those. Those are some underrated cards, and people who are really into the hobby right now, they have nothing but recency bias, where all the old time hits are things that they've collected, or the things that kind of popped off during the Scarlet and Violet era and then the Mega Evolution era. They're kind of jumping a little bit more to the Sword and Shield, but Sun and Moon, no one's really talking about that. Not even before Sun and Moon, right? So X and Y, but vintage, it's so vintage stuff. That's where I think it's really the most gains is at the moment. Now, Modern Japanese. I know a lot of people have started collecting modern Japanese because it's the most cheapest, most accessible thing that you can probably collect or rip open and have fun with. But if you're going to be doing that, then just know that your gains are not going to be as big. If you're going to be grading modern Japanese cards, then go with the chase cards of the sets, right? Go with some of the promotional cards that we get in the English sides, but they're not promotional in the Japanese sides. They will go for a lot more. Take this example, my beloved Oricorio, right, from Phantasmal Flames. Someone keeps bringing it. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. I'm talking on the fly, so I don't remember your name, but someone mentioned it. Maybe it was PK. But he mentioned, like, I told him, or I mentioned to you guys, I'm collecting Oricorio cards, right? They're going for, at the moment, high $12, $13. You might be able to get them for like $12 or $11.50 per card. If you're buying a bunch of them, right? Try to really get it at a cheaper price, right? But the Japanese counterpart is not a promotional card. You have to pull that card, and that is a $30 card. So we're talking almost twice its value, in the Japanese side. So whenever if you're going to grade modern Japanese cards, stick with chase cards and stick with promotional cards in the English sides that are not promotional on the Japanese side. So there's a premium for those cards, right? But I like to grade modern Japanese cards for some of the cards. Like, I just like the art. I really do like the art. I'm in it for the art for some of these. So I'll grade them, and after a while, I'll just put them up for sale because it's like I like them, but I like revolving my collection. Someone else picks it up, right? So they do sell, but some of the new modern Japanese cards that I've graded, think about twice. You really got to think about the popularity of the Pokemon, the generation. Really also think about the artist. So, you have to be a little bit more picky about those cards. But if you're just looking to grade whatever you want to grade for your collection, then have fun with it. Go for it. Some of these new modern Japanese cards are amazing, even if there's not crazy volume behind it, right? We understand that a lot of the people who are collecting right now or grading right now in this hobby are people who grew up with generation 1, 2, and 3. After that, things kind of get a little bit murky. They learned some generations playing Pokemon Go, but then they fell off, so think about what you're going to be grading with that. Anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to show you for some of the people who are new to the hobby and they want to go ahead and grade. Like, you'll understand, like, build a community with people. So whenever you're trading and collecting, you have crazy stories. Oscar, Oscar from over 15 years ago went ahead and gave me a Blastoise, right, from his collection, one of his childhood cards, and I went ahead and gave him a Japanese booster box. He pulled the damn God pack, but he got the card that he was missing, that Blastoise. I couldn't script that shit up. That shit's insane, right? So, make connections with the hobby, have friends, make friends, talk. It's fun. It's fun. Whenever you're looking into grading with tag, then understand that there's going to be some positive things. There's going to be some negative things. Positives is that you're going to see your cards will sell for the price that you're asking. Negatives, you're going to have a lot of doubters. There's a lot of doubters in every single hobby. And right now, especially in Pokemon, there's going to be doubters when it comes to tag rating. There's going to be doubters when it comes to new content creators. There's going to be doubters for the new modern cards, even though history has a tendency of repeating itself, right? But there's going to be some positives. There's going to be some negatives. But for tips for you guys, advice, make sure that you guys are doing your due diligence. Check for centering. Don't just assume the centering is going to be good. Check for centering. Be smart about it. If you have a bad center card, go ahead and sell it, get some cash, and then maybe now you have the clash to go ahead and add maybe a couple more $100, and you'll be able to get a better centered copy of your chase card, right? You can do investments like that. Then whenever you grade with tag, fantastic. You're not gonna get upcharge for grading a chase card. PSA literally cannot say that, right? But there's going to be some positives, there's going to be some negatives, and use whatever you can to do the best job grading. It's a lot of fun. I think if you're into the hobby, you should definitely try it. I understand if you you half-ass it and you get burned, I can promise you're not going to get back into it, because most of you guys don't accept failure, right? But the people who do succeed because they do try, they're going to get addicted to it. This is fun. And the more graders that we have with tag, the bigger the community is going to grow. Outside from that, I really do hope that you guys had a fantastic day, and I'll guys catch you next time. Peace.